Good evening to everyone present here. I hope I'm audible. Also,
Yes, ma'am, you are.
due to bandwidth, yeah, thank you. Due to the bandwidth, I don't think so. My video will be on. So sorry for the inconvenience. And with this, let's begin with the class.
All right.
Yeah, just a second. I'll be sharing my screen.
Ma'am, should I introduce you?
Yeah, sure. Like I thought that I've already been introduced in the last class, so they.
Meenakshi, but we would like to introduce you again because some participants may not have been present in the last class.
Okay. My bad. Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Go ahead. Yeah.
Good evening and welcome to today's session. Today we have with us research scholar Ms. Meenakshi Nagamanickam from IIT Kharagpur. Ms. Meenakshi is a legal research enthusiast who did her BA LLB from Symbiosis, Hyderabad. She has always been keen on working in the field of intellectual property laws and has interned under various IP law firms such as Rights and Marks, Cholamandal IP, and Origin IP. Currently, she is pursuing a 2-year LLM at Rajiv Gandhi School of Intellectual Property and working on the project Geographical Indications and Plan B registration in India. Ma'am, I would now like to invite you to take the stage.
Thank you, Gayatri. Yeah, so in the last class, I'll just give a quick recap of the last class. In the previous class, we saw what and how to write an abstract, what an abstract was and how to write an abstract. And then we saw what case commentary is and how to write a case commentary, how to read a judgment in a given span. And also we did see the structure of case commentary as well. So now let's get into the main topic of this entire curriculum, that is stages of legal research. I will be sharing my screen, just a second. I hope my screen is visible, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so before we get into the stages of legal research, I hope Ms. Bhavya has briefed you upon the types of methodology. If I'm, can I get an answer for this? Is the class well versed with the research methodology so that I can get into stages of legal research? Okay, I'm assuming you guys are well versed with the methodologies. So let's get into the topic. Okay. So the first one, let's see what are the three main phases of a legal research, of a legal process as a whole. So first, all we got to do is decide upon what we are going to research. What is the topic? What is the area that we are going to choose? So the question what is the main and the foremost thing to decide before beginning the research as a whole. For example, as you all know, I'm very much interested and driven towards intellectual property law. So within intellectual property law, there are various other important areas such as copyright, trademark, and I am interested in geographical indications. So that would be my area of interest. So I will be deciding upon what research questions to answer in geographical indications, and within geographical indications, a particular area. So we will go one by one. Let's first just see what are the three phases. So the first phase is to decide what we are going to research upon, area of interest. That's the first phase. Second phase will be how do you plan the research study? How do you go about the research study? How will you collect the evidence? That is why I asked you, are you people well versed with the methodologies? So in the evidencing phase, you will need to know the methodologies to carry out the research study, because you'll be planning here. This is the major chunk of your research. Then the third phase is, while you're undertaking the study through the research methodologies, how are you going to collect the information? Either like what surveys are you going to do, an empirical study, or are you going to undertake a doctrinal, non-doctrinal? So all the methodologies will come into play. So these are the three main phases. Let's see. Just a second. Yeah. So this is an 8-step model to carry out our research. As we all can see here, we've already discussed what are the phases. So now in the first phase, the step 1, there are 8 steps. Step 1 is how to formulate a research problem. We should all remember that without a research problem in our head, we cannot start any research. For what to do in research, we need to have a problem in our head. Once we have a problem, only then we can go about to conceptualize that. We'll see one by one what these steps mean by. Let's just take a quick glance of all the 8 steps. First is, you will formulate a research problem. Then you will conceptualize the entire design, the research, entire project as a whole. We will go through one by one. Next, the third step is, how will you collect the data? What are the instruments that you use to collect, that you will use to collect for, data collection? What are the instruments that you'll be using? Then the samples that you will select. Then how do you write a research proposal? This 5th step is the most important step, because in dissertation or thesis for that matter, research proposal is considered it's given the utmost importance. In fact, in PhD, once you go for PhD, they will be selecting you as a PhD scholar or candidate depending upon your research proposal that you submit to the respective college. Next, again, the 6th step is, what all data have you been collecting? So that you will have like a major chunk you'll have. Then the step 7 is, you will process and you will display that. So what is mean by displaying is basically, you will write it, right? You will display, you will put it in, let's say, Word document, and then you will write a report on that. So these are the main steps. They are divided into 3 phases, and these are the 8 main steps. But since we can see on the face of it, these steps are too technical per se. So let's make it very simple. Okay. So first, let's understand, why do we conduct a research? Why is this legal research necessary? Yeah. As we all can see, the first point what I've noted here is, usually in the public domain, that is, let's say on the internet or any public domain as such, like hard copies, libraries, whatever we have, the knowledge or understanding or literature, if it is not available in a particular area, like it is very new, the topic is very new. So let's say, as I took example of LGBTQ community, right, in the previous classes, let's say that topic has not been touched upon at all. Let's just assume that. So if someone comes up with a research in that area where there is no knowledge or understanding or no literature as such available, so there you can conduct a research. That is one area. Second, where the knowledge is already available, there is good amount of, like, considerable amount, we cannot say good amount of, let's say there is considerable amount of knowledge already in the public domain, but we feel that it should be redefined. There is something more that we have to add to it. So in that cases also, in those areas, we can conduct a research. Then the third, where we can conduct a research, why we need to conduct research is, let's say there is a time lapse. Let's say 10 years back, someone has done a research, and after that, like let's say in 2010, someone has conducted a research on disability law and the digital world. I mean, it was very new, right? Digital world. We right now it's developing recently, right? So let's say back in 2012, someone has just wrote something upon. They had a fair idea about what digital world would look like. So they must have written something on digital world and disability law. Let's just assume. But there has been a huge time gap from 2012 to 2022, right? So 10 years. So in such cases also, we can conduct our research. So these are the three main areas where a research can be conducted. So let's revise once again. So the first one is where there's no literature at all. Second, we do have some knowledge and we do have some available data, but it is not good enough. There's something else that we have to do. And the third one is where there's a huge time gap between both researchers, like research A and research B. So these are the areas where a researcher will go looking for conducting a research. So next one, in law, what research writing means. Why do we write? I mean, how do we do a research writing? For what purposes we do research writing in law? That is for academically, as we saw how to write a case commentary, right? So like that we write articles, book, research papers, etc. That is totally based for academic writing, like as we said, BLLB or PhD or LLM, for that matter, any other area of study. For academic writing, we use research, we conduct research. Next is professional writing. So here in legal field, if we are supposed to respond to our clients, so in such we write a brief, we write a case brief. As we saw, case commentary is different from case brief, but a case brief is a very small, ingest and brief of an entire case. So in such cases, if we are supposed to brief a client or anything of that matter in response to client problems, we do write. So that also, for that also we need to conduct our research, right? So that is one of the professional writing examples. Second is action research. Here, for instance, Nirbhaya rape case happened, right? After that, we got an amendment act in 2013 saying that the sexual offenses, it needs to be criminalized further. Like strong laws need to be brought up. So in such cases, still, like the legislative, for instance, it was passed, but still the rape cases are increasing in India. So why? So this can be one of the action research, and this will constitute under professional writing. Similarly, even legislative process. So let's take an example of like if there is an abuse of RTI, right to information, if there's an abuse in that field, and there needs to be some change. So in that legislative process, aiding to that legislative process, if we write something, that will also constitute as research, but under professional writing. And third is report writing. Report writing, uh, basically here it's pertaining to government, if they make laws, if the legislature makes laws, for, let's say, here I've taken example of labor laws. Labor laws back then were very draconian, right? So in order to bring about few changes, they consolidated all the labor laws and simplified it. For that, for this entire process, the legislature will come up with a report. So in that cases also, they need to do a lot of research. So in such case, report writing, for you conduct research for writing a report. So in all these three things, you will do a thorough research, and that's why research writing is very, very important. Okay. Now, as we saw the 8 steps and the 3 phases of a research writing, as I said, it will be very difficult. It will be too much for us to understand in one go. So I've made it very simple into 3 steps. That is, first is conceptualizing, then evidencing, and the final is how you write a research paper itself. So let's get into it. First one is conceptualization. As the name itself says, a concept, an idea, your perception of a particular area, your idea about it, without, like, you have some vague idea about a particular area, your interest. So you will want to do, you will have to have that will, that like you need to have that interest in a particular area. You need to be passionate about that area. Only then you will be able to carry out research in that particular field. Next step that we have to remember is any study that is undertaken by a previous researcher. That is, some researcher might have written some paper, right? And in that paper, there must be some thread that is still not completed, still incomplete by that researcher. So where that researcher has stopped his research, we can further take it. Let's say that researcher has, if you read a research paper and you feel that particular researcher, let's say researcher A has written a paper, and his paper, you feel it is incomplete, so and so points are lagging, and you feel so and so lines should be there. From there, you can start researching. From that particular point which is lacking, you can start your research. The next one, let's say problems are found in the study that are already done. So a particular research has already been done. Let's take hypothetical example. For instance, on vaccines, research has been done. It has been published. Okay, the entire study has been published. But right now in 2022, we found that few problems are there in that research. And that is why you will further take that study and you will come up with your own research and you will point out the problem. So that can be one area where you can start your research. So all in all, to write a research paper, we should remember that it should be a researchable topic. We cannot take anything under the sun and say that I will start writing a research paper. It is not possible to do so. It should be a researchable one. It means there should be some content that is already available and that you found that there's something lacking or some problem is already existing. Only in such cases we can start writing a research paper. Also, most of the I'm not sure about the PhD students, but most of my fellow mates, we are too ambitious. We get too ambitious. We don't keep the time constraint in our mind. We have 1 year to complete our master thesis. I mean dissertation. So we don't usually keep the time constraint in our mind, and we just and also, for instance, in cases like right now COVID, so there was lockdown. So in such cases, to do field work, it is very tasking, and it is at times it is not even possible to conduct a field work, right, in such situation. So time constraint, the situations, the circumstances, also at times you will be needing money to travel to a few people will not give their interview without some money. They expect some amount in return for their interview. That also should be taken into being, should be considered before starting your research. All these things must be considered. It should be a researchable topic. You should see the time. You should see what are the problems in funding, what are the circumstances prevailing right now. Also, or above all these things, your domain expertise, as in what is your area of study. If I am doing something in IPR, I should obviously take something which is related to IPR. I have some knowledge about it already. So you should always see about your domain expertise. Now, I don't have fair knowledge about CPC. So I cannot say that I will start doing some research in CPC and go on with it. You need to have some basic knowledge. Otherwise, you have to first start doing a proper thorough research and then start with that topic. So these are the things to kept in mind while you conceptualize a particular research area. And then comes your evidencing part. Here, you will support your research, as in you will start seeing for the data. You will refer to papers, research papers, journals, basically all the primary sources available out there first. Next, you will see whether empirical study is possible, whether you can go and do a field work, whether you can interact with people, whether you can conduct surveys, or you can take, I mean, you can take interviews, or you can, by way of questionnaire, collect the data available out there. So you should see whether that is also possible or not. Then the data which is already collected and there in the public domain that we already have seen, right? So something which is already available, that we have to take it, we have to structure it, we have to form our own opinion. We cannot just copy paste someone's research paper. We can't take huge chunks, and we can't take, let's say there are 10 papers, 10 papers related to one topic. Let's say COVID-19 and its COVID-19 and its impact on mental health. Okay, so there are 10 papers on this topic. We can't just take paras from all the 10 papers and say that this, okay, this researcher's opinion is this, researcher's opinion is this, and take all the 10 opinions and put in your paper and say that you have formed your opinion. No, you have to read all the papers, you have to form your opinion from it. You can't just copy paste. You can refer to it, you can cite and you can refer to it, but you can't copy theirs. That should be kept in mind. So basically, logical, scientific, and proper evidencing should be done. All the data should be properly collected, should properly be cited, should properly be executed. For this, all the research methodologies should be taken into consideration, and which methodology is suitable for your research work should be looked into. Next, this is the format that we follow right now for writing a dissertation. It depends and it differs from university to university again. And so right now, by a cumulative, I've looked into most of the universities, and a cumulative, through cumulative research, I've made these headings. So first is abstract. We did see how to write an abstract in the previous class. Then introduction about your topic. Usually this introduction goes 2 to 3 pages. And then comes the problem statement, which is the most important paragraph of your entire dissertation, of your entire research paper. So usually problem statement, at times they collab with the introduction in the last few paragraphs, or you can write it separately as well. Then comes the reviewing of literature. It is very, very, very important. Your entire research paper depends upon the literature review. How well you review your literature, that will show on the paper, your final result. It will be, that will be shown. Like you can if you come up with a good research paper, that means your literature review was that strong enough. Then while doing literature review, you can find certain gaps in the literature review. You can either write it within the literature review, or you can put a separate heading and write. Then comes the research objectives, questions, methodology, chapterization, and finally the references. So let's get into this one by one. We will start with the bib. Okay, so these are the headings, right? Now keep this side for a minute, and let's get into the major topics and understand how to go about writing a research paper, that is for dissertation. How do you go about it? First is bibliographical data, which is nothing but you will collect all the data that is available. That is usually what we do. We write a bibliography at the end. We will refer to few databases or journals, etc., and we give their references under the heading bibliography at the end of our paper, or whatever it is. We give it at the end of the entire study. But when you start your research, you have to first maintain a database. You have to first collect all the materials and put it under one Excel sheet, or to make it very easy, you have reference managers available online, that is Zotero and Mendeley. Zotero, you can directly add it on to your Word document, and Mendeley, you have to download it. So these two database searches, what they do, whenever you are searching for a particular topic online, they will directly get added to Zotero and Mendeley. You'll have an extension, and when you just click on it, it will go and store, it will get stored in Mendeley or Zotero. So once all the search has been done online, once you go to this database, Mendeley or Zotero, and you click, you just type, how you type in Google, if you just type a particular keyword, all the search, all the papers, all the documents that you've saved will appear. So it will be very easy. Instead of copy pasting in Excel sheet, these managers will do the same work for you. The next is, once your bibliographical database is ready, either in Zotero or Mendeley, as I said, you can just do Control F and you can select few keywords, and based on those keywords, your abstract will also appear. So even if you read the abstract, and within the abstract also, if you just control F and find the keyword, your work will be too easy. By reading the abstract itself, you can figure out which paper is to be read and which paper is to be eliminated. So this will do the majority of the work for you. We over here, when we are doing a bibliographical data survey, we take almost a month to collect the data. We do rigorous research. We just give ample time to the bibliographical data, because majority of your research work is done here itself. It will be very easy for you in the coming future when you actually start typing. So also we should remember, we should avail all the free access tools that are available online, all the open access material, even few Cambridge, Oxford, the most important databases out there. Few research papers are open access, and few you already get it through your university access. So we should remember, first we should avail all the e-resources, and then go for hard copy materials, that is books available in library, all the hard copy materials, whatever it is. So that is about the bibliographical data. So let's say now we collected all the materials and we stored it under this reference manager tool, that is Mandan. Once we store, now what is mind mapping? Mind mapping is nothing but while you are doing your research, and mind mapping will come throughout your journey, throughout your research journey, mind mapping is going to be there. Basically, what is mind mapping? So it is nothing but you will structure your entire research. You will structure, restructure, and this is not only for the problem statement, it is for throughout the research process. You will basically get few ideas while you are actually doing your research, or once you start typing your research also, you will get certain ideas, thoughts, you will do, redo. So while doing this, maintain either in a Word document or in an Excel sheet, wherever it is possible for you, or even rough note for that matter. You need to create a hierarchy, take a topic, then you will probably get few subtopics. Then you will get to know the problems. Basically, whatever is going on in your mind throughout the research process, you need to put it down somewhere so that it will be easy for you to eliminate or to add certain points. This will help you to centralize, this will help you to remain focused. Let's say you put 10 points in a page of paper. You put a heading A, and that heading A has B, C, D, E subtopics, and that B, C, D subtopics has further subtopics and questions and objectives and so on and so forth. You feel that topic B is not needed for your research, so you can strike it out. So the remaining things you will focus on. You will not focus on the B topic. That is what mind mapping does. And this is very important throughout your research journey. And we should keep in mind that mind mapping and literature review, as we will see what literature review is in detail. So these two things will go hand in hand. And while going hand in hand, a researcher will get to see new dimensions of his research, how to go about a research. So let's see. Okay. As in the beginning, we saw that problem statement is very, very important. And in the entire structure, we saw that first comes abstract, then comes introduction, then comes the problem statement. So once the introduction is over, either the last paras of introduction or separately, you can put an heading and start off with the problem statement. If you don't have a problem to your particular area, then the entire research is of no use. So this problem statement comes after introduction, that we know, and we should understand that this is the most important step, that also we know. What is it exactly? We can understand this by way of an analogy. Now let's say we want to go to a particular destination. Let's say I want to go to Kanyakumari. Okay, but I want the shortest route to go to that particular destination. Let's say there is no destination at all in the first place. Then what is the use of seeing for a shortest route or route itself? I need to have a particular destination to carry forward or to see whatever it is. So here, in order to go to the destination, we need to take certain steps, right? That is what the problem statement is. The destination, in order to go to the destination, first you have to identify what the problem is exactly. Here, also another analogy we can take, that the research problem is like a foundation of the building. As we all know, if the foundation of the building is not strong enough, the entire building might collapse. That is what a research problem does. Research problem is the foundation of your entire research study. That should be really strong enough for your research study. For your research study to be strong enough, the research problem should be strong enough. I've taken one quote: if one wants to solve a problem, one must generally know what the problem is, right? We need to know what the problem is. So that is why you need to take a pretty good amount of time to formulate your problem in the first place. So let's see how this research problem looks like. So research problem might be simple or it might be complex. We will understand with the help of an example. Let's say depression. I have taken depression as a topic for my research. Now, I want to conduct a study regarding the services that are available to the patients who are facing depression and they are living in a community. How can we do this? First, if it is what type of service that is available, if I want to focus on what is the type of service that is available, that I will do qualitative research. Quantitative, if I want to focus upon the number of people who are using such services, then I will go to the quantitative, that is data. Depending on all these things, I will structure my research problem. Basically, once the research problem is formulated, depending on what I need, do I need the data or do I need to know what kind of services are available to the patients? So depending on this, I will frame my research problem. And once I frame my research problem, then I can get into the actual steps of the research. So let's say I have formulated my research problem and it is very clear enough. What is the next step that I'll be doing? So next step is literature review. So let's take a quick recap so that we will not lose the flow. First, I will collect all the bibliographical data out there. And while doing so, throughout the entire research process, I will do mind mapping. And the most important thing is this problem statement. That is, first will come your abstract, then the introduction, then the problem statement. And once your problem statement is over, you know what the problem actually is that you have to address. Now, we've already collected all the bibliographical data here, right? So all this will be very helpful in the literature review. So for literature review, bibliographical data is very, very crucial. So we will review one by one, right? One by one in the sense, whatever data we've collected, we will review them. But why should we review in the first place? We review because we get to know what work is already done by the researchers, what work is yet to be done, what is the gap, what am I supposed to actually explore, what work is already there in the public domain. All of this we will get to know by actually reviewing a literature. What is reviewing of a literature is nothing but you read the entire literature out there and you review it. So what do we review? Now we saw why do we review. Let's see what do we review. We will review what are the current trends in the research, what is going on, ongoing research, what are the ongoing areas of research, what was back then, what were the trends back then, what are the trends right now, what all can we research, what all are the leading thoughts, and leading thoughts but they are not concluded, those topics are not yet concluded, let's say they are ongoing itself. So such topics we review. We review in order to know all these things. And let's say few arguments in the past have been done, but they've not yet been concluded. And those arguments are of very much importance even now, right now in the contemporary era. Let me make this easy by giving you an example. So let's say I hope, okay, there is this, okay, let's take an example of Pochampalli Ikat. Okay, Pochampalli Ikat is nothing but it's a handicraft. I mean, it's you weavers weave saris over here. Okay, this is one of the type of ikat. So let's take it as saris for the time being. So Pochampalli saris, right? What was the situation of the weavers back then? And do they, is it still that much important in the present contemporary era, or it was just of the past? Were there any research conducted back then? Did the researcher conclude everything properly, or the researcher did not take into consideration few important areas? So all of this will be taken into consideration, and that is what a researcher will do while reviewing. So how do we review? Now we saw why should we review and what should we review. Now let's see how to review. Basically, as I gave the example, you will have some theory that is already available out there. And while reading that theory, you will understand what is not there, what is not available, what is lacking, and what might be the nuances in that area. And then you will critically point out. Basically, while you're reviewing, you will critically point out that this is not there, that is not there, this is good for the research, this is not good for the research. So this is how we do a review. And how do we classify this? So while we were undertaking our literature review, we maintained an Excel sheet and we divided it into year, time, theme, the subject, variables, countries, jurisdictions. So what were the variables that, for instance, in this example, let's take the sari example. We can take one variable would be weaver, one variable would be the economic conditions, one variable would be the political or the social conditions. So we will divide it and accordingly go through all the data that is available, all the literature that is available out there. Basically, by data, I mean literature. So all the literature that is available out there, and then put it under the required headings. So let's see what are the rules of literature. And it's basically a summary, so please pay attention. First is the topic that you choose, obviously. Then you will see who is the targeted audience. For instance, here I am submitting here for the dissertation, right? So who is my targeted audience? Who all are going to read my content? If I'm going to publish in a particular journal, if I'm going to publish it in a criminal journal, how am I supposed to do? If I'm going to publish it in an intellectual property journal, how is it going to be? So depending on the targeted audience, I should choose my topic. And based on that, I will be doing my bibliographical data collection. After doing that, you will see whether I have to take a new angle to it, what were the reviews that are already been done, so on and so forth. As we already saw, we need to be critical while doing a literature review. The tenses that we use and the voices that we use while actually typing the literature review, it should be very consistent. It should be critical enough. And then it should be very systematically done. It should be structured. You cannot write, let's say, the researcher in this paper has not pointed out so and so points. If you're writing those so and so points, it should be in a structured way, in a systematic way. You cannot put it here and there. Then, after doing your literature review, you need to take feedback of your fellow mates, that is your own friends or your, let's say, your guide, research guide. You need to keep on taking feedbacks very often. And the most important thing what I learned during my dissertation is I was too ambitious and I took all the past data that is from past 20 years. And it was very hectic for me to actually put it under an Excel sheet and then do a literature study, literature review. So I cut short it to the past 10 years, or let's say 12 years. That is from 2010 onwards, I've started reviewing the literature available. So while doing a review of a particular literature, we will definitely find certain gaps in it. You can either critically write about those gaps within the literature review itself, or you can separately write it under the topic gap analysis. So let's see what gap analysis is. So as we said, while reviewing, we might point out or we might see that the researchers have not focused on particular topics, or there need to be something new, or a particular trend has been followed. As I said, for geographical indications, okay, they have focused majorly on the socio-economic conditions. The political factors have not been taken into consideration at all by most of the researchers who have researched in this field. So right now, my project, I'm focusing even on the political factors. So this will be some new research that I'll be doing. This will be my novel research. This is what they see. Novelty is where you fetch marks for your research. Next comes something that is based on your opinion and on perception, but not on the facts out there. Let's say facts are something else, but the researcher who has written a particular paper, who has published a particular paper, that paper is mostly based on that researcher's opinion and not on the facts that are there out there. So in such cases, we can point out that this is the gap. The researcher has not based his research or not done his research on the facts available, but is mostly based on the opinion and on his or her own perception. So this will be one of the gaps. And next is, it wasn't scientifically carried out. That is, let's say we took two variables out there, and those two, let's say domestic violence. We are discussing about domestic violence. The variables, let's say again, variables are the the people who have suffered the violence and their socioeconomic conditions. Let's say these are the variables. So these the relation that the relation that the researcher has brought about between these two variables was not scientifically carried out, that there is no relationship between them. They didn't point out the relationship properly. It was not satisfactory, or there was some error in that entire procedure, or the data that they collected was not verified properly. So all these things will constitute to findings, I mean the gaps in the research paper that is already there. So basically, let's take a quick recap of these two things, literature review and gap analysis. Basically, once you collect all your bibliographical data and put it under that database, let's say Mendeley or something, and then you will start actually writing your literature review. And while you are reviewing a particular literature, if you find these gaps, you can put it under the separate heading known as gap analysis, or else you can directly put it under literature review itself. Okay, so this is a pictorial representation. It will be easy for you to understand. On the top of the funnel, as we can see, is the literature review. That is all the literature that we've collected through bibliographical study. Everything is top of the funnel. And the neck of the funnel is gap analysis. What were the gaps? And we found out the gaps, right? For instance, as we saw, the political angle was not taken in the handicraft study. Only socio-economical conditions were looked into. The political angle was not taken into consideration. So that is the gap that I found out. That is the loophole that I found out. Based on that gap, I will start my research. My research will be based upon the gap that I found out. So this is your entire research, how you go about in one pictorial representation. I will stop here for a minute, and I will be taking any questions if there are. I'll give you a minute. Feel free to put the questions in chat box as well. And if you need any point to be repeated, if you want me to repeat any point, I'll do that.
Hi, ma'am.
Hi.
Ma'am, can you repeat how can literature review and mind mapping be done hand in hand? I mean, can you put?
Okay. Yeah, definitely. Okay. So let's go to this. As I said, mind mapping should be done throughout your entire research study. But most importantly, mind mapping and literature should be done together, which means, let's say I've taken 10 journals out there. Okay, I've looked into certain journals and I've collected 10 research papers from those journals. So right now in my hand, I have 10 journals, right? And what my mind mapping does, I've been doing mind mapping since the beginning of my research. That is, I've chosen a particular topic. Let's say, I don't know, let's say um, COVID vaccine. Okay, vaccination for COVID-19 vaccination. That is my study. So that is my topic. What mind mapping does is I will take certain other subtopics of this. Let's say they've come with Covaxin, Covishield, XYZ vaccinations, or all those studies being done, the trials being conducted, the ethical issues related to that, what are the political factors, all of this, I have it in my head. And mind mapping, as I said, you can take a piece of paper or a Word document and put it, like you can draw, you can just write it out there. Okay, that is mind mapping. And now I've taken my literature review, right? So literature review, let's say these 10 papers are there and I am reviewing it one by one. Now I've reviewed my first paper. And in that first paper, I found out that there were certain ethical concerns while they were doing trials upon the subjects, trials upon certain people. There were certain ethical concerns. So this will be one of my point that I'm going to focus in my research. And now let's take a piece of paper or let's say Word, and there I will add in that subtopic. Let's say one of my topic was what was it? Social or ethical or political concerns or whatever. So under that ethical concerns, this will be one of the points. So this is how it goes hand by hand. I will review a particular literature, that is, I will be studying a particular paper. I will come up with this one line, that is, there are some certain ethical concerns out there. And I feel that one topic will be useful for my research. And so already what I've done in my mind mapping, what I've done, I've taken this topic, that is that is COVID-19 and the vaccinations and these social, economic, ethical concerns. Now under this ethical concern, I will put this one line over there. So this mind mapping, what it does is once I'll actually start typing, I will know, okay, this sentence I've taken from this particular literature review. So this is how you do mind mapping and literature simultaneously. I hope I explained it.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Okay, just a concern out here to everyone. I guess most of you are traveling. So for your assignments, I will be giving something from this, particularly from this, because this is very important how to conduct the legal research stage by stage. So please look into it, and I hope the videos will be very useful. So please pay attention in the class. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so if there are no further questions, I will continue with the topic. Yeah, so till literature review, let's just go through the structure. Yeah, we've seen abstract, then introduction, problem statement, literature review, gap analysis. Now, once gap analysis is done, okay, sorry, I've not added hypothesis over here. After gap analysis comes the hypothesis. So let's see what hypothesis is. And before starting the topic hypothesis, we should remember that it is not compulsory that every research paper has a hypothesis. Okay, it is not compulsory at all. How? Let's see. So first, let's understand what a hypothesis is. It is a tentative explanation. Basically, it is an educated guess. You will just you will have a fair idea as to what might be the situation out there, or what might be the prevailing circumstance out there. What is the current position? You just have an educated guess in your head, and you will make a statement. It is an assertion, it is an assumption, but not a vague assumption. You can't assume that the earth is flat and then make a study and come up with saying that the earth is no, that is a vague one. It is some, you can't just assume something like that. It should be an educated one, as in you need to have some idea about it, you need to read something on that particular area, and then you will have certain assumptions in that area. So once you do so, see, again, here I've highlighted that only if substantial amount of work already exists in the public domain, you can formulate your hypothesis. Otherwise, you can't. That should be kept in mind. You cannot come up with your own assumption, something which is already there, and then you have a fair idea about it. Why do we do this? What is the purpose behind, giving a hypothesis? As I already pointed out, it is not compulsory, but a hypothesis will give you a direction to your study. You will focus on your research. You will be able to frame certain objectives for your study. That is what a hypothesis does. You will have a particular statement, you will type a particular statement out there. Now, let's say the hijab controversy is going on, right? Before this controversy came into existence, you just have a statement of your own. You have studied, you have seen the news out there, you have read few articles upon it, and you have made your mind, okay, this is the problem, this is something, this is your statement. You will put it in your hypothesis. Now, whether that is true or not, whether whatever you thought in your head, whether your statement is right or wrong, that you will know while you're doing your study. So at the end of your study, your hypothesis might be right, your hypothesis might be wrong. So the type of hypothesis, the errors in hypothesis, we will look into in the coming classes. Right now, we will just know what it is and why do they do it, why do they write a hypothesis. So basically, as I said, it is an assumption, right? It is a hunch. Like you have a hunch about a particular topic, about a particular area, a statement, and then you will be following in that direction. And I've given, according to Good and Hurt, hypothesis is a proposition that is relationship between two or more variables, and that it is put to test to determine its validity. We will put it to test. That is, test is nothing but your survey, your study, your entire research. Next, what are the characteristics of hypothesis? What all should be kept in mind? What is it? First of all, hypothesis can be tested only when it is clear and unambiguous. It should be simple, it should be clear. You cannot use jargons again. You cannot make it confusing. Your statement must be very simple. Let's understand with the help of an example. Here, the average age, you're stating in your hypothesis, okay, that the average age of male students in this class, in a particular class, is higher than that of female students. Now here, what are we trying to compare? Average age of this class. That is what we're trying to compare. Which population are we comparing right here? Female and the male students. And what are we trying to establish? That higher average, that the age of the average age of male students, it is higher than that of female students. So it's very clear, it is not confusing, it's very crisp and clear. This is how a hypothesis should be. Hypothesis, the statement that you're giving in hypothesis, it should be very clear and specific and very simple. Next, it should be, again, as I said, you cannot come up with something very vague. It should be existing, it should be known. And based on that, you will frame your statements. Again, before formulating a hypothesis, definitely we should know some theoretical we should have a theoretical understanding of that particular topic. And if there's some empirical study, it's already there in the public domain, we need to know that. By doing this, we can achieve a really good hypothesis. So this is what an hypothesis is actually. I mean, how to do an hypothesis, how to write a hypothesis. Firstly, you should express it in clear terms, and it should be measurable. We saw here that it should be very clear, it should be very simple. At the same time, it should be, the statement should be measurable, in the sense it cannot be something like infinity. You cannot measure that, right? We'll understand with the help of an example. Suicide rates vary inversely with social cohesion. This is the statement. Now we can see here that it's very clear, it's very simple. But what is the problem? We cannot measure, we cannot determine what this social cohesion is. Suicide rate, yes, it is varying inversely, okay. But what is social cohesion? There's so many subtopics under it, right? We should be very specific as to what it is. So since it's not very specific and it cannot be measured, that is why this hypothesis stands, I wouldn't say incorrect, but since you cannot measure it, you cannot come up with this hypothesis. Now let's see what are the important points to remember in hypothesis. Firstly, the term hypothesis. In the word itself, there is thesis. Basically, you will prove your research based on whatever you're proposing here. Based on this statement that you're giving, you will carry forward your research, and as I said, at the end of the research, you will get to know whether this is right or not. And here, you should be objective, in the sense, whatever things that are already out there, from those statements, you should come up with your own understanding, your own understanding of that particular statement. You should be objective enough. Value judgments, which are really, really subjective, they cannot be taken for hypothesis of here.
Ma'am, you're not audible.
Seems she's gone offline.
Sorry, due to connection issues, I couldn't stay in the meeting. Can someone tell me till where did I stop? Like,
Ma'am, you were discussing hypothesis.
okay, I'll just share my screen and someone help me point out which slide I stopped. Okay.
So next
Is
slide.
it characteristics? This one?
Go further up, further. This one.
Ma'am, you stopped on value judgments.
Yes, value judgments. That's
Okay,
it.
okay, okay. Yeah, thank you. So, yeah. Now, another point to remember and we have to note that during your entire research, while conducting your research might progress in a particular direction. And due to various factors, as we saw, time constraints, funding constraints, circumstantial constraints, your research might lag behind or it might be progressing in jet speed. So depending on those research progresses as well, your hypothesis may change. Let's say I was supposed to conduct an empirical study, empirical research, but due to COVID, I couldn't do so. And before, so my thought process was I will do an empirical study, and based on that, I framed my hypothesis. But now that is not possible. So here my hypothesis might change depending on the research progress. And three things that we should remember for hypothesis, which are very, very essential, is knowledge, experience, capacity that we've already seen. This is just like a quick summary. And based on all these three things, we can formulate our hypothesis. So what are the three phases? Let's sum it up. Firstly, we'll have an assumption or a hunch of a particular topic. Based on that, we will make few statements. And then based on those, we will collect the required data. We will analyze it. We will come to conclusion. And at the end of our research, we'll get to know whether our hypothesis was true or false. Next is research objectives. So what are research objectives? Basically, they form the main association and relationship that we seek to discover in our research. We will see one by one what it is. And when we have a logical understanding of what we are doing, of our study, of our research, then we can frame our objectives. So basically, we cannot just for the sake of reading, just for the sake of reviewing, we cannot. We have to actually put in our minds and then derive certain logical understanding out of the papers that we are studying. Only then we can frame our objectives. In fact, we will be able to frame hypotheses, questions, objectives, whatnot through our entire study only when our literature review is strong enough. So then coming to the objectives again, objectives should be done in very few lines. You can't write 10 research objectives. That is not advisable. You should, a good ideal one is 4 or 5 research objectives. Obviously, depending upon your research that you're undertaking, it might vary, but ideally, overall, it's 4 to 5. And any person out there, any layman who's reading your paper, based on these objectives, should understand, should get clarity as to what the researcher, that is what you want to carry forward, what you want to actually prove in your entire paper. By reading these objectives, I should get a fair idea of the entire research paper. Okay, these are the undertakings done by the particular researcher. So how do you start? How do you actually start typing? Most of them get stuck over here. How to start the research objective? How to frame it? So few, okay. Firstly, to study. When do you use this? to study so and so, to study the, let's say, to study the nature of handicraft products in Telangana. I'm just giving an example, hypothetical situation, hypothetical example. So why do I use the term to study? What does the statement depict? Here, I am not commenting on the topic itself, but I will be deriving certain understanding from the previous researches that have already been done. That is to say, let's say handicraft products, or let's say foodstuff products. That is, right, Hyderabad Halim is very famous, or Bengali Rasgulla is very famous. So let's say, to study the current situation of Bengal Rasgulla. Okay. So here, I am not commenting on the food product. I am going through the previous researches that have already been done, and I'm trying to get a logical understanding out of it. That is when you use the term to study. Next is to examine. When do you use this term? So basically, if here the cause and effect appears, this statement will depict what is the effect of the change that your particular research is looking into. For example, amendment of rape laws in 2013. To examine the amendment of rape laws, to examine the Criminal Amendment Act of 2013. That is your statement. Basically, what effect did this amendment bring in toto? That you will be examining. And that is where you use the term to examine. Next is to inquire. Basically, you don't know whether a correlationship exists in the particular statement that you're giving. I don't know whether the socio-economic conditions are in correlation to that of the current handicraft. Okay, handicraft and their socio-economic conditions. So I don't know whether the relationship exists or not. But I am inquiring into that particular area. I am going to test in order to see whether such relationship exists or not. I am not sure, but then I'll be inquiring into the topic to know whether such thing exists or not in the first place. So that is where you use the term to inquire. Next is to analyze. To analyze, the name itself is self-explanatory. You are not sure whether the area is workable or whether it's under the influence of each other, and that is why you are analyzing the particular topic. You will analyze, and then you will come to know, okay, whether this is workable or not. So that is where you use the term to analyze. Lastly, you will use to suggest term in cases where you are done studying, you are done examining, you are done analyzing, and then you're going to give your opinion. Basically, this comes at the end, like in conclusion part. Before the conclusion part, you suggest certain suggestions are given in research papers. That is where you use the term to suggest. To suggest some to suggest amendments in a particular area, to suggest some changes, some amendments in the working conditions. So something of that sort. You give your own suggestions. Next, after research objectives comes research questions. So what does these research questions do? From your problem statement. Now, as you all remember, in the beginning itself, I said problem statement is very crucial. Only when you know your problem, you can frame your objectives, you can frame your questions, right? But right from the beginning, problem starts there. You will be questioning in your head, okay, this is the problem. And because of this problem, questions will be arising. It will be bombarding in your head. So basically, right from the problem statement, the research questions will be in your head. And we need to keep in mind that too many questions are not good for a particular research. Now, I have given, let's say, I have given 4 research objectives, right? Now, each research objective for one, let's say one research objective is to study the existing socioeconomic condition. Research objective. So now, based on that objective, I will max to max come up with 3 research questions for that one objective. So there'll be 5 objectives. For each objective, 2 to 3 research questions is to be given. And further, those research questions can further be subdivided. That it depends on the depth of your study. Also, it should be direct. It should not be confusing. It should not be ambiguous. It should be very direct. It should be very simple. And okay, so this is how it looks like. In a particular research that you're going to undertake, if the research is too complex, it is a bit difficult, or you need hypothesis in such cases. Let's say it is not that complex, it is less complex, it is not too complex. In such cases, you need not come up with hypothesis. You can directly start with your research questions and research objectives and research questions. Let's say your research is very, very minimal, very basic, very a topic that is already there in the public domain, and you have to just come up with certain research questions, that it's not that complex enough. So in such cases, hypotheses or objectives can be omitted. Usually it is not recommended to omit research objectives, even though your research that you're undertaking is the least complex of the least of the complex issues that you're undertaking. Still, it is not advisable to omit research objectives. You can, but it is not advisable. So let's go to the first page. Yeah, here. As we all saw, this is the structure, right? So given this structure, I've not included hypothesis over here. After gap analysis comes the structure. Now let's go one by one in just one liner. I will finish it. Abstract, as we saw in the previous class, it needs to be very crisp, very short, mostly 4 to 5 lines, wherein you'll be having introduction and all in gist. The introduction, objectives, methods, and your purpose and your conclusion, your findings, all of it in gist. Usually, when you have ample time given, like when you have a year or so to submit your research, it is advisable to write abstract at the end. Then comes the introduction. Introduction, while you're reading all your literature out there, you can definitely frame your introduction. Introduction is not that difficult when compared to other parts of your research study. Next, coming to problem statement. As we also, problem is very, very important. Only and only if you have a problem in your head regarding a particular area of study, only then you can start with a research. If you don't have a problem in your head regarding a particular area, then your research it doesn't hold good at all. You can't just take a statement and say that I will do a research on this. No. Next, literature review. So as we saw, to do literature review, bibliographical data is very, very important. You will collect all of it with the help of Mendeley or Zotero, or not necessarily the databases. You can use even like Excel sheet and come up with a proper bibliographical survey. And then based on that data collected, by data, I mean all the research papers from journals, from here and there, even books, everything. And then you will start with your literature review. You will review your literature one by one. So by literature, I mean papers, even books are there, even book review you can do in this literature review. Then one main thing is you need to critically do that. Obviously, you'll critically do that. And as I said, while doing the review, you will find certain gaps in a particular research paper. So those gaps can be separately enlisted under the heading gap analysis, or else you can directly put it under the literature review itself. Next, after gap analysis, if your study is very, very complex, then you should come up with hypothesis. And we saw what a hypothesis is. It is basically a statement, a hunch, an assumption that you have in your head, and you will give those statements over there. And then while you're conducting your study, you will, based on that statement, you will be conducting your study. And at the end, obviously, based on your findings, you will get to know whether the assumptions, the hunch that you had in your head initially is right or wrong at the end of your study. Then comes research objectives. We saw all the the types of the statements to be made, that is to examine, to inquire, all of that we saw in the research objectives. And research based on your research objectives, each objective can have 2 to 3 questions, research questions, and these research questions can have sub questions depending on the depth of your research you're undertaking. And yeah, and methodology, I guess Bhavya has already explained you the types of methodologies. So once this everything is done till methodology, then comes your chapterization. Now, what is chapterization? One by one. That is, you can't just sum it up in findings and say this is my research, right? You will come up with chapters. You will come up with, let's say, if you're taking COVID vaccine into consideration, that is your research. You will say one can be about the ethical issues, one can be about the trials being conducted. So you will divide your research into chapters. And finally, your references, that is citation. You will be citing, you will anyways cite, you will give footnotes, and in the bibliography you will give all the references, like where, from which journals you've taken, what databases have you used, all of that will come in your references. So this bibliography will be very easy, because in the beginning itself, by help of Mandeley, Zotero, or even Excel sheet, we have already done a thorough bibliographic study survey. So this is how a dissertation or research writing is to be done, and I've summed it up. So any questions, I'll be taking it further. Thank you.
Hello, ma'am. Good evening. I'm Amit Bansuri. Ma'am,
Good
can
evening.
you explain the chapterization section a little bit more elaborately?
Okay, sure. Let me take help of my own research that I'm undertaking right now. So it will be helpful. Just a second. Okay, let's discuss. Do you have any topic in your head right now till I open my own research dissertation? Any just random suggestion?
Yeah, ma'am. Actually, I was thinking of vaccination
Okay.
perception among disabled.
Oh, okay, very good. So here, what are the two major topics? One is definitely vaccination, definitely COVID-19. Are you talking about COVID-19
Yeah, COVID-19.
vaccination?
COVID-19.
COVID-19.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, the pandemic, COVID-19 vaccine, disability. All these are the major chunks. How will you put it in your chapters? So first and foremost, as I said, who is your target audience? If you're going to, if your target audience is, they are someone from the disability law field and they don't know much about uh, the vaccination side, the science background and all, they're not from that, you will be focusing majorly on the vaccination topic and less uh, in the disability field, right? So based on that, how will you formulate your chapters? So one can be about the vaccination itself, the initial chapters. It can, the heading can be pandemic and COVID-19 vaccine. That can be your one chapter. Next chapter can be the trials conducted on, I don't know, let's say disabled section of people, persons with disabilities. Okay, the trials conducted on them. I'm just giving hypothetical situation. Okay, so that can be one of your chapter. And one of your chapter can be the international instruments that are regulating this particular area. So these, based on your research, how you want to carry forward, you will divide your chapters. And yes, definitely the mandatory chapters will definitely be, how do I say, the last chapters will be suggestions and conclusions, and before suggestions will be your findings. So findings, suggestions, conclusion, these will definitely be your mandatory chapters before bibliography. Okay, before these three chapters, And like introduction also, mostly people put introduction as chapter 1. Even though you're introducing the topic right in the beginning after your abstract, they consider it as chapter 1. So let's say from chapter 2 onwards, you will explain about the vaccine in one chapter. Then next, as I said, the relationship between that and the trials. Then the ethical issues with respect to people with disabilities. What are they? What troubles are they facing? What are the hindrances that they are facing? Are they like one chapter can be totally on the accessibility of this vaccine for people with disabilities. So it is how you are going to formulate your entire research. Based on that, your chapterizations will be there. And once you explain all this initially, then definitely you'll come up with the findings. In case you do an empirical study, that is field work, you go to let's say you're going to hospitals, and then over there you want to find out who are the people with disabilities, and then in relation to that, what what vaccination are they taking, and all of that data you collect. That will be your empirical study. So then you will find, you will get certain findings, you will do your field work, you'll get the findings. So that will be one of your chapter findings. Then again, you'll give your suggestions how to improve the same, if there are any loopholes, if there are any loopholes from government side, be it any side, that will be. And then at the end, you will conclude. So this is how you will go with your chapterization. So is this clear, or should I explain further?
Yes, ma'am. I got it. Thank you.
Okay, welcome. Okay, any further questions I'm willing to take? This is important because most of your dissertation and most every dissertation topic that you choose, more or less in most of the universities, these headings will definitely be there. So feel free to ask.
Hello, madam. I'm Dr. Amit.
Yeah.
Ma'am, my one more question. Actually, this is regarding your previous lecture because I was unable to attend from half of your lecture.
Oh,
You
okay,
were
okay.
explaining
Yeah.
about SCC online website.
Yes. SCC legal database. Yes.
Yeah. So in that, during that lecture also, I posted my question on chat box that
Okay.
whether any person can access that data, or is it only subscription based access?
Subscription.
So if one wants to access it,
Okay.
what is the method?
Okay. So I'll be very frank here right now. This is some insider information, but still, right now, my institute, I have access to SEC online. Okay. But within my institute itself, I am not able to access due to certain technical issues, even though I have access here. I am right now currently using one of my friends' SEC online access. So my point here is, firstly, you definitely have to have a subscription, and it is very costly. You have free trials. Definitely, you have free trials. You can access the case laws over there, but that free trial will definitely end after one period of time, right? And it is costly. It's almost 27,000.
Yeah, it's a very
Yeah,
costly.
yeah. So the alternative, as I said the other day, you have SEC online blogs. You have they do publish articles. SEC online, they do publish articles you can access only for judgments. If you are willing to access something for judgments, and you're not able to do so because you don't have subscription, then it's not recommended, definitely not recommended. But still, in such scenario, Indian Kanun would do. It will have the same judgment here, but as I was explaining how to read a judgment, how to read it easily, like you have head notes, they have divided and all of that, that you will not find in Indian Kanun. But definitely the judgment will be there, and you can navigate by pressing Control F here as well. So this is one of the alternatives we used to do when we didn't have access to this database.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so in tomorrow's session, I was thinking we will see something about Blue Book citation, because most of the journals, most of the conferences, wherever you have to submit your paper, they are asking for Blue Book citation. We will see the latest edition. And along with that, let's see the types of hypotheses a bit with examples. Few examples, I'll give you few examples, and let's see examples from all of these headings. We will understand with the help of examples. And if you people want anything more than this, I will be taking up in tomorrow's session. Feel free to post in the chat box right now, so that I will finalize on the topics, and depending on that, in the upcoming session, I will explain in detail, in depth. If you want to know something about a particular topic that we've discussed so far, anything for that matter, you just drop it over here and I will explain in detail.
Hello, madam.
Yeah, hello.
Amit again. Ma'am,
Yeah.
it would be good if you give one example
Okay.
of this research writing, that is
Okay.
one research, and
Okay.
these are the examples of problem statement. This is literature.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it will be easy for us
Yeah,
to.
definitely. Yeah. That's what I was saying. I'll take up, let's say, problem statement. I will come up with an example. I will show you. Basically, I will show you this is for abstract. I've taken an example and I've divided it and I showed you what is introduction in that abstract, right? So I will be doing the same for problem statement, literature review, gap analysis, everything. For each of the topics that we discussed today, I will, except for methodology and chapterization, except for these two things, I will come up with examples for everything. Yeah. Okay. And citation, does anyone want a particular citation to be explained? Any particular reference citation machine do you want it? Let me know. Also, if you want to know something about plagiarism, Turnitin check app.
Yes, ma'am. Regarding plagiarism and the
Okay.
softwares.
Okay. Softwares and plagiarism check. I'll let you know. And how to minimum, how to come up with minimum plagiarism, that also we'll go through. What are the tips and tricks, what you can do to, in order to, cut down upon the percentage. Yes. So one is plagiarism, okay, and the rest is examples for whatever we did so far. And then I'll come up with citation, Blue Book citation. Any other specific citation you people want me to take, I will take. Okay, I guess there are no questions. Critically, okay, I didn't understand this. Can you just a second? I'm reading out from the chat box. Here, can you share book sources for disability studies and gender and disability studies? Okay, so you can directly do one thing, go to Google Scholar and you just type any head. Okay, one more thing, point to remember, whatever is there in your head, without framing it grammatically, don't see grammar and all while you're going for a particular search in any platform whatsoever. Just type the keywords that you want. Just type the keywords. Let's say you want something about gender justice. So within gender justice, I don't know, gender justice and disability, hysterectomy, anything of this. Just type the keywords and type where do you want it. Even jurisdictions, you want India, then type hysterectomy in India, whatever it is. Just those words. So you'll get it. So book sources, you will find it on Google Scholar. It should be enough. From there, you will get major chunks of whatever exact keywords that you give. You will be able to go through those paragraphs, so that you can. Choosing what is relevant for your study. Okay. How to critically engage with a text. Choosing what is relevant for your study, in the sense, how to, if I'm not wrong, is it how do you critically review a text? Is it, what, am I understanding it right? Okay. Yeah. So how do I critically analyze? Very good question. So let's take an example of a research paper. Okay. I've read the entire text from the abstract, right? From the abstract till the conclusion. I've gone through everything. Here, firstly, I feel that the researcher has not looked into a particular angle. With the help of an example, I will give you a help. Okay, let's take this hysterectomy. Okay, I'll just answer this. Ramesh, just wait a second. I will answer you this. Before that, yeah, how to critically engage with the text. So let's take the example of hysterectomy. I was doing this seminar topic that was women and disability, and within that, I chose the topic hysterectomy. Okay, so here, while I was going through few papers, I found out that few papers had entire information regarding from historical perspective, and then they came up with what was the situation prevailing back then and what was the situation prevailing right now. Few of the papers, they did not talk about the economic conditions, about the economic conditions of the women with disability, and what was the driving factor for the parents to go for hysterectomy. They definitely spoke about the trauma that they undergo, all the present social factors, but not about the financial factors, like one or two papers. So what does one mean by critically engaging? You have to see what is lacking over there. You will definitely have an idea, a vague idea about your area of research. You will have to see what all are missing. Once you read 10 papers, you will find out that in this paper this is missing, in that paper this is missing. Oh, I've read this from this paper, but the same thing is missing over here. So in that case, whatever pointers are missing, that you will stick on to. And that is how, when you critically engage with the text, you will find the gaps in that text. Critically engaging is nothing but you're finding the gaps. While analyzing the entire literature review, you will find out the gap. We will do one thing. We will go through this also. We will take an example. I will give you a research paper. We will go through that research paper and we'll figure out what are the gaps in that particular research paper. So basically, critically engaging with the text is nothing but finding out the gaps in that thing. And how do you find out a gap is nothing but you have to do an extensive study, and only then you will understand these are the areas that are lacking in this particular research paper. I hope I answered that. Okay, coming to Ramesh, we have an idea. Okay, we have an idea about Google Scholar and Google Books, but we're asking about some other web sources. As I said, e-books, you need to go through whatever. Mostly you don't have free access, like Springer and Scopus publications. Most of these publications, most of the books that are published in these well-reputed databases, they are not freely accessible. So as you already have an idea, Google, even I have the idea of Google Scholar only, because apart from this, you have to pay. Only then you will be getting the access to the ebooks.
Hi, ma'am.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, but we have to wrap up soon.
Yeah, sure. That's it. Any questions I'll be taking tomorrow. Yeah. Thank you for the class.
Thank you so much, ma'am. This session was very informative.
Yeah, thank you.
And
yeah, just a second. Any questions that I'm not answering today, I'll be answering it tomorrow. Thank you.